try to address at least one of them today. The first is understanding why we need to address prevention in our givings to those in need. Ladies and gentlemen, even if our governors, even if they said, okay, we're going to take 1% of the state's budget that is directed to the poor, and we're going to focus that 1% on prevention programs. And we're going to include those with the service programs, and together we're going to work on the problems of helping the poor. Okay? Even if the foundations, for example, in Michigan, the Kellogg Foundation, the Skillman Foundation, the Jewish Foundation, the United Foundation, even if they all came together and said, hey, we're going to take 1% of our monies that we're servicing those in need, and we're going to try to prevent the problem with programs designed to prevent, working together. And finally, even if our corporations that gives one-time million-dollar donations to help a specific cause or certain cause to help the poor, let's suppose they incorporated a prevention component designed to work with service programs in efforts to prevent the problem, as opposed to simply using that money to service the problems of the poor. Let's suppose all of this came to fruition. Ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line is it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work because unless you had the knowledge as to why we need it. Why do we need a prevention program? Why do we need to try to prevent the problem before we utilize it to simply service? And that's why I'm here. First of all, to bring about an awareness, and it's a taxing situation that I'm dealing with, but it's important. It's important because those people who wrote in and says, wait a minute, who called and says, wait a minute, we don't understand why we have to do this. Well, again, that's why I'm here, and that's what we're going to talk about just for a second. Why is it important? Because you become the safeguard. You are the safeguard. Knowledge is power. When an organization says, well, we are working with the poor, and you can say, fine, you are working with the poor, and you can look, for example, many of them do, they take out their Google, now what prevention program are you working with? And if they say, well, I got my own, well, no. There's several other autonomous entities that are working on prevention that you should be working with. You see, knowledge is power. When our major corporations say, well, we made a one-time donation to helping the poor, feeding the hungry, all right? What prevention program is in place to assure that the next time you make that one-time donation, that we have seen some progress of preventing the need for feeding the hungry, helping the poor? You see, if it's just simply giving, for example, our governor in the state of Michigan, they have in their hands a program proposal designed that to say, well, before we service these problems, there are programs out here designed to prevent them. And instead of us turning these programs away, we should work together with those that we have in service and see what the problem is in terms of preventing the problems. Servicing the poor through prevention as well as service. Effectively, in the future, no program that is submitting itself to the government to help those in need would ever submit a program without having a prevention component involved. Because you now know, hey, for every service program, now this is very important, there is a prevention program working on that very same problem. We're not saying choose either or. We're saying working together. And see, once you understand that, then you'll understand that that's what we're trying to fight. It's a need to make government smaller, to make your donations more accountable, to not have our major foundations in Michigan, the Kellogg Foundation, the Skillman, the United Foundation, the Jewish Foundation, these major make announcements about their massive efforts to give to the poor all the time, knowing that there are prevention efforts out there working on the very same problem. When you understand that, when you see the needs for prevention, then it'll work. But if nobody asks, if nobody questions, and we say, oh great, the governor is putting money in to help the poor, the foundations are putting monies in to help the poor, the major corporations finding out. When you see it, and you don't see a prevention component, you can ask if you work for the government. You can ask if you work for the foundations that are doing this. You can ask if you understand within the corporate elements that are pushing this money to the poor and no sense of accountability. See, you can ask, wait a minute. I know that there's another program that's preventing. Why can't they work together? Why can't we give them to work together? But you see, the problem is, if you don't know, if you can't see the need for that, then it's all for naught. So that's one very small but absolutely important area that we have to deal with in understanding how we're going to help those in need. Again, ladies and gentlemen, as always, my name is Creighton Rippey. I'm the director of the Greater Detroit Community Outreach Center. And as I said, our agency, like many other prevention agencies, are put last in the efforts to sustain itself. We have depended mostly for the last 20 years of the 40 years that we've been here on your graces to provide support for our agency. And we're asking if there's an element of truth to what we're saying and where we're trying to take the public. Prevention first, service second. First try to prevent the problems of those in need, and then try to service it. If that makes an element of common sense to you, then we're asking for your support in terms of a donation. You can push the donation button, and also we provide these weekly lectures, talks, and dealing with various issues that, as it relates to those in need, we're dealing with these issues on a weekly basis. We're asking you to subscribe. You press the subscribe button, and then from there, we'll go together. We'll go together. Remember, knowledge is power. Once you understand it, nobody can fool you again. Nobody can say, hey, we're servicing these millions and millions of people. Service without prevention is service. But the problem is still there. Again, my name is Creighton Rippey. Until the next time, thank you very much for looking in.